Hey, what's up, everybody? My name is Jeremy Schumacher. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I'm the Jer in Wellness with Jer. Thanks for stopping by and checking out my channel. Today, we are back with a movie review. Just saw the new movie Monkey Man, starring and directed by Dev Patel. And we're going to talk about the mental health themes in the movie and kind of give my review of it, my reaction to it, and go over kind of what the movie's maybe about and what you can expect if you go to see it. So I was pretty excited for this movie. I didn't know a ton about it going in. Not somebody who's seen a ton of Dev Patel's other work. I knew it was his first movie that he was directing, so I was kind of excited about it for that. And like honestly, just kind of got some good buzz about it from the internet. I think maybe he did an AMA on Reddit or something, and I caught some of that or saw some of that. So just kind of like the internet hype around the movie. People said it was a really good action film. Kind of was looking for something that maybe wasn't a huge thinker. And so I was excited to see it. I wasn't really sure what all the hype was about other than knowing it was Dev's, like we're first name, well, we're buddies, we're on the first name basis. It was Dev's first movie that he was directing. So yeah, didn't really know what to expect and kind of went into it blank. And I really enjoyed it overall as an action film, as kind of that break from reality. It told a good enough story and didn't reinvent the genre, didn't try and do too much. I think maybe if I knew more about politics in India, I might have felt it was a little bit more about something. But like just going in blank, I really enjoyed it. I actually did a bunch of research after I saw it because I was curious what kind of some of the themes and the metaphors were supposed to be about. Um, I would put it somewhere between like John Wick and Kill Bill, like definitely drawing from that same kind of stylistic martial arts movie. I read some of what Dev Patel put out there on like his inspirations, and similar to kind of like the old kung fu movies and those style of movies that Tarantino draws from. So I think that's probably like the Kill Bill vibe I was getting from it. The fight scenes in it were pretty well choreographed. I enjoyed it. It wasn't so like overpowered as John Wick. Like John Wick never loses and is unstoppable. So it wasn't that. It was much more of like character growth and needing to overcome. So some of the character growth in that was good, and some of some of what I felt, I have vertigo. So it was like, ooh, the camera's real shaky, or that's making me nauseous, or those cutscenes are a little rough. And I went and saw the movie with my wife actually, and she kind of agreed that some parts of it were a little dizzying. So it wasn't just because I had vertigo. And reading kind of the reviews, other reviews online, that was the big criticism I saw, was like too much shaky cam, which I guess was based on they were filming somewhat during COVID. So they're kind of on an island to not have any spread and not having to deal with people being sick and stuff. And so their crane broke and they kind of had to create on the fly some rigging for their camera. So that's where some of it came from. Some of it was filmed on different cameras or GoPro or an iPhone. And they kind of stitched it together and tried to clean it up. So some of it is maybe a little dizzying on purpose. As far as the story in the film went, I think it came across okay, in that it was kind of like early in the film, he's a little bit rougher of a fighter. He doesn't quite have his whole thing put together. He wants to get revenge, but he's not ready for it. And then as the movie goes on, it gets a little tighter and tighter as he grows. So I thought maybe that storytelling in the movie kind of covered what maybe was a practical error or a practical issue with having their crane for their camera break. So recovered nicely from that. I liked the story of the Monkey Man, the kind of folk tale from India of like what this story was about. This monkey that wanted to reach up into the sky and grab this juicy manga, which was the sun, kind of like from what I know of European storytelling and folk tales, of like the Icarus story of the Greek god who flew too close to the sun and has burned up his wings. So similar kind of to that, and the gods punish him and whatever. And then the way that that's woven into the story is Dev's character, who doesn't have a name, it's just called Kid. he names himself Bobby at one point, but we know that's a bit of a ruse. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And so the kid in the movie wears a monkey mask while he fights. So he has these underground fights that he's in, and loses and loses and loses until later in the story. So all of that is to say, I enjoyed it as an action flick. I thought it was fun. There are worse ways to spend 2 hours-ish, 2 hours and change on an afternoon or a weekend. I thought it was a fun little flick. I think if you like the John Wick movies, or you like sort of that Kill Bill style, I think it's fun. I think it's definitely worthwhile. Um, so what are some of the themes? The themes I liked for the most part in the movie. I thought maybe the revenge theme was the weakest, actually. But I liked the theme of taking on corruption. I liked the theme of corruption within the police department, and corruption from politicians, and corruption from spiritual leaders. As a religious trauma therapist, I see that on the regular. That spiritual leaders are abusing their powers. I see the systemic injustices that take place in society. I'm a systems thinker. My background is licensed marriage and family therapy. Therapists who study family systems. We learn about ecosystems. We learn about how people's interactions within groups affect each other, and how to have a healthy family. You kind of need that healthy structure. And so seeing structural things, like corruption within a police department or a militant police state. And so that's where the setting, I think, really worked and was interesting as an American who's not super up on world politics beyond what maybe um, gets covered in the news. I mean, again, scrolling headlines and trying to be informed, but it's one of those things where, like, I don't dig into politics too much. American politics stress me out enough. And so not knowing a ton about like Modi and some of the people who are ruling India, the current Indian regime, not knowing some of the metaphor in this movie of he was kind of played this like tough on crime police officer candidate, spend this politician, and then also sort of the spiritual leader guru as well to get votes. So the movie's kind of about like the current regime in India being terrible and all the reasons it's terrible, and overthrowing them, which makes sense later in the movie when spoilers later in the movie when the kid is getting his revenge. He kills the police chief. He lets the politician go, which really bothered me when I was watching the movie. It's like, why did he let the politician go? And then he kills the spiritual leader. And so the revenge tale's kind of complete, but like the politician escaped, which I thought was really weird. But kind of knowing then, like, oh, it's talking about the current Indian regime, like that makes sense. So but yeah, the revenge theme was maybe the weakest, but I thought like a character who's so bothered by the corruption and these issues, taking that issue and taking that fight. The movie really speaks about like marginalized community, the trans community, speaks about marginalized religious beliefs, speaks about taking people's land. So again, even if you're like an American, you can watch it and think of several several of the different genocides that are going on currently, our own history with genocide in America, taking people's land. So like it speaks to that. Obviously in America, again, all the anti-trans laws, all the homophobia, transphobia that's being passed, even though it's unpopular and not really supported by science or the popular vote. And so defending these marginalized communities is good, and having those marginalized communities also join the fight. Like it's not just one character kind of coming in as a savior figure to do it all, but that these marginalized communities help this character make this character stronger, and then help to overthrow the corruption. So like I like that piece of it. Little baby Jeremy, who didn't have a ton of world experience or life experience, loved the movie Braveheart. I know how factually inaccurate it is. It's basically a fictional movie of a character named William Wallace who did really exist. But like, I love that revolutionary film. I love those ideas of overthrowing systems. I've always liked those things. So I really liked the movie for that. I liked how marginalized communities got to take a piece of it. Kind of distracting within that is like the dead mom trope, which again, like if you've watched any of my other reviews, I talk about it with pro wrestling a lot. Like all the pro wrestling stories tend to have like, oh, the wrestler dies, which is not a thing that happens all that often in real life. And so it's just a weird storytelling beat, because it's like, oh, we're really like really laying on the grief. So I do think the movie could have maybe done more to have the mother character be an important figure instead of just through her death she's important, although she dies when the kid's pretty young. So that idea of trauma and trauma from childhood being pretty important. But like just watching your village be taken over, watching it be burned is probably enough for the revenge. Do we really need to tack on the dead mom? And do we need to have the dead mom not be a character in and of herself? She's just serving the purpose of this male character's motivation. And that's not great, but again, like, I don't know that I've seen a ton of revenge movies that are done better. I don't see a ton of trauma that isn't like that over the top trauma. Like, we don't have a ton of movies that the trauma is like moving away or having, something that's done to you that's unsafe. Again, trauma can come from any time that your brain isn't safe and then doesn't complete that stress response cycle. So like, yeah, a big obvious capital T trauma in the movie. I don't really take issue with that. I'm kind of nitpicking around that. I think the religious themes in the movie were interesting because it's a religion I'm not really familiar with. Um, so the movie being set in India and some of the Hindu gods and goddesses coming up in it, like, seems very mythical, and I'm less offended with myth than real life harmful religion. But again, like, I tend to think organized religion is harmful. So I'm sure there's stories of abuse and there's this other stuff. Obviously, the movie kills a religious leader um, and gets revenge. So like that probably speaks to that. But those kind of things that I have with like American evangelicalism, where I'm really on edge, like because the movie was set in another country in a totally different culture, I think for an American audience, that's maybe a lot more appealing. If you're somebody who has religious trauma from one of the big like Protestant or Christian religions, it's probably not going to be super triggering for you, other than some phrases like I praise you, and it talks about God, but again, like kind of an undefined God, and there are other gods and goddesses that come up a lot. So I think that setting in another culture was really more interesting than triggering. That's my personal take on it. Um, so that didn't bother me so much, other than like we're gonna kill the religious leader in the movie, but also religion kind of gets a pass. So kind of one of those weird movies where lots of commentary about corruption, about the systems that need to be overthrown, about revolution that also doesn't like go anywhere. Um, one character having good morals and overthrowing things is not how we're going to actually have revolution. So again, I liked that kind of the members of the trans community within that culture, which is different than we talk about it in America. These are not people who are necessarily trans. It's a totally separate gender, which is how some indigenous groups did it here in America. And so again, like the trans argument as it's done in America politics is overblown, and it's performative politics. It's not really based on anything. So, but again, I think a good cultural commentary from that the people from the temple then join the fight and are badass warriors. So I liked that. I know it's being review bombed a little bit, probably from conservative Christians who are offended that trans people exist because I don't know. Um, but again, like the movie hit, I think on the themes it was trying to portray. Just I don't know that I expect a 2 hour movie to have a ton of depth around like this is how we overthrow a corrupt government. So I think it's one of those things where I liked the themes it hit on, but it didn't really like go get them, champ. It doesn't really do a lot for like what you're supposed to do or actionable items, other than like revolution. It's like sounds great in theory. Um, but again, as an action film, I'm not really expecting it. I don't hold John Wick to the standard of like, oh, it didn't change society. It's an action film. So trying to not like hold it to some sort of fake standard. Was it good entertainment? Yeah. People who were in the theater with me when I saw it seemed to enjoy it. There were a couple like brutal, pretty dark murder scenes or scenes that were like violent in a way that I hadn't seen watching Tarantino or John Wick or those movies I've mentioned. Boondock Saints, I did a review of, like seeing some some pretty brutal stuff. Excuse me, some pretty brutal stuff on screen. There was some unique deaths in this movie. Also, I've been playing Sifu, which is a kung fu beat 'em up style game. It was a PlayStation's free game in March, maybe, and so I've been playing through that. And so I think I was ready for like this kind of like going through different settings, just nonstop beating people up. It's pretty cool. So again, it's kind of that like maybe not so mindless as like a Michael Bay action film, more story and more heart and feeling behind it than that sort of like devoid of any important storytelling movie, but still like it's a revenge action film centered heavily on like martial arts and fighting. So if you're down for that, I would say go see it. If you're offended by minorities existing, go see it. Maybe you'll learn something. Fucking bigots. Um, if you're review bombing it and you haven't seen it, fuck off. Dev Patel takes his shirt off at one point to show how excited or how ripped he got for the movie, and there was some excitement in the theater for that and on screen. So, again, like I, I think for the most part, the filmography was or like the way it was shot, the cinematography. There we go. It was pretty good. I liked the soundtrack for it. I thought it was a good movie. I had a good time seeing it. I think it's worth a watch. So yeah, that's my review. Go see it. Go see it in theaters. It's a lot of fun. Wait till it's streaming at home. Do your thing, but I think it's worth a watch. I think it's one of those movies that'll be up there with like the Kill Bills and the John Wicks for that action genre. I think it's good enough to be in the conversation with those films. I don't think it's going to be your all-time favorite. I'd put like a 7.5, 8, probably solid 8 out of 10. Like it doesn't change the world, but it's fun. Probably 7, I guess. I don't do number ratings. I don't know why I'm throwing it out there. I was ill prepared in my own video for a number rating. It's good. Go see it. It's a good time. Lots of fun. So if you are interested in sort of the mental health behind pop culture stuff, drop down in the comments. If there was stuff that you liked or didn't like about the movie, drop down in the comments, leave a review. If there's something else you'd like me to review, do that. Like, subscribe, all that stuff helps do the YouTube algorithm things. I've got merch, Patreon for the podcast that I do, Your Therapist Needs Therapy, and also yeah, so there's the Patreon for that and merch for the channel and for the podcast as well. We're trying to do all the things. This is a brand new setup. I have new equipment that I'm trying to do with minimal editing, live streaming and stuff. So we'll see how that goes. So yeah, give us a like, subscribe, share, and thanks for stopping by and checking out the channel. Take care of yourself. Take care of somebody else. Peace out, everybody.